Hello there. I am the Midnight Time Traveler. Welcome back to another evening of time travel stories and adventures. Tonight, we're traveling to Middle-earth from the Lord of the Rings. I know you may be using this video to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe. Also, comment below where you are listening from and what time it is there. Now, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin. Sunlight drifts through a small round window rimmed in green, the soft glow painting amber halos over polished wooden beams and plump armchairs. I stir beneath an impossibly crisp quilt that smells of lavender and hearth smoke, listening to the gentle tick of a brass clock on the mantel. The floor is warm underfoot, the boards smooth from generations of careful sweeping. Somewhere beyond the pane, a robin trills, its melody weaving with the faint clink of teacups in a nearby kitchen. I breathe in butter, honey, and a whisper of pipeweed, the signature perfume of respectable hobbit living. For a moment, I forget the mechanics that scattered my atoms across ages and instead settle into the curious peace of simply waking, feeling smaller in body, yet larger in wonder. I dress in a modest linen shirt and borrow the softest waistcoat I have ever encountered, a moss-green piece that fits as though it expected me. My borrowed host, whose name I will note later with due academic precision, has left a generous breakfast on a round oak table. Thick slices of seed cake rest beside a crock of golden clover honey, while curls of bacon hiss on a cast iron pan suspended above glowing embers. A pot of tea grown in distant South Farthing waits, its fragrance warm and malty. I record every flavor, every sound, penciling observations in a small leather journal as I chew. Hobbits, it seems, do not rush mornings. They curate them like rare art. I have the distinct impression that punctuality here is judged not by minutes, but by the fullness of one's stomach and spirit. Stepping through the circular doorway, I am greeted by a patchwork of emerald lawns studded with yellow buttercups. Stone pathways wind between rounded facades, each door painted its own proud hue. Across the lane, an elderly hobbit woman noses through a basket of freshly cut peonies, humming a song that might predate the kings of Shilliths. Her gaze offers a nod and comments quite seriously that the weather feels agreeably adventurous, a phrase I vow to reintroduce to the scholarly world. The air itself appears brewed from sunlight and soft earth, so clear I can almost taste the sweetness of distant orchards carried on it. A young gardener approaches, wiping soil from his hands onto well-worn trousers. "Morning to you," he says with a smile shy as dawn, introducing himself as Samwise. He inquires whether I fancy a walk down to the water, for the trout have been leaping at dragonflies since first light, and it would be a shame not to witness the spectacle. I accept, of course, and he hands me a small walking stick carved with ivy patterns, evidently certain that travelers benefit from firm footing, no matter how gentle the hills. As we stroll, Sam speaks of potatoes, of the proper shape of a good ale barrel, and of rumors that Gandalf might visit soon with fireworks that mimic dragons, though he doubts the mayor will permit anything too loud. We pass hedgerows buzzing with fat bumblebees, their legs dusted in pollen like miners after a day's honest toil. Every few yards, Sam pauses to point out local flora. Sweet sylvan cabbage that rabbits prize, marigolds that keep slugs at bay, and a blue flower whose juice, when mixed with dandelion sap, makes a stain ink favored by clever children for secret maps. I note each detail, sketching petals and leaves with practiced strokes, feeling data transform into delight. Farther on, dragonflies flash metallic green above the glassy surface of the water. Trout indeed leap, silver arcs briefly catching the sun, then vanishing with satisfied splashes. Sam laughs every time, as though the fish perform solely for our amusement. By mid-morning, the Bywater market stirs awake. Stalls sprout like mushrooms, striped awnings sheltering mounds of ripe tomatoes, wheels of cheese, and bouquets of fresh herbs. A baker dusted head to toe in flour hands out samples of honey-crusted seed rolls, insisting that outsiders must never depart on an empty belly. Children chase one another between barrels of cider, their laughter carrying through ivy-wrapped trellises. I stop at a booth selling carved wooden toys, tiny boats that actually float, and spinning tops balanced so perfectly they might whirl until tea time. The craftsman boasts that he once sold a toy swan to Frodo Baggins himself, and despite my scholarly vow of objectivity, I purchase a miniature pony adorned with painted daisies. Field research occasionally requires whimsy. Noon arrives, wrapped in the melodic clang of the Green Dragon's brass bell. Inside, the tavern breathes cozy twilight, even at midday, candle stubs flickering along low beams. A fiddler tunes in the corner, while clover-patterned curtains stir above window boxes. I order a platter recommended by the barmaid, roast chicken with lemon thyme and butter-soaked turnips, accompanied by a half pint of the legendary Green Dragon Ale. It is amber, smooth, and carries hints of applewood smoke and joy. Across the room, a pair of tweedy talkers debate whether second breakfast should be reclassified as legitimate brunch, a motion that seems to pass unanimously after another round of ale. Bellies full, Sam and I exit into early afternoon light that softens the edges of every leaf and stone. A faint breeze carries distant notes of a tin whistle, perhaps a shepherd up on the slopes above Tookland. We walk the lane back toward Bagshot Row, Sam chattering about the health of a particular party field, mentioning how Mr. Bilbo once hosted dwarves there who sang songs that rattled crockery for a week. I marvel at how legend mingles with everyday gossip here, as normal as discussing weather fronts. In a sun-splashed clearing, we pause by a towering oak. I rest against its broad trunk, feeling ancient bark press cool lines into my back. Somewhere high among the branches, a squirrel chitters, likely displeased with our intrusion. Sam produces 2 crisp apples, offering one with a grin. "Even heroes need snacks," he says. I cannot argue. While we sit, a distant rumble rolls across the hills. Not thunder, but the creak of a wagon laden with fireworks, sparks of colored paper escaping a loosely tied tarp. Although the driver is obscured by the sun, a tall, pointed hat silhouette hints at upcoming marvels. Sam's eyes widen as he recognizes the familiar outline. "Gandalf," he whispers, voice caught between glee and awe. I close my journal, folding the page carefully so ink will not smear, and prepare for whatever wonders the afternoon still holds, content in the knowledge that time itself seems in no hurry here, and for once, neither am I. The cart rolls along the lane and settles on the soft grass of the party field, wheels groaning in protest before resting. From the driver's perch, Gandalf swings down in a swirl of gray wool, his eyes bright beneath the brim of a tired yet dignified hat. He greets Sam by name, then notices my curious stare and grants a nod that feels like a handshake delivered at a polite distance. Sparks of violet flicker between his fingers, as he smooths a tarp, and the wizard chuckles at the gasp it draws from nearby children. He speaks of a small display planned for twilight. Nothing grand, he insists, merely enough to remind folk that wonder needs regular exercise, just as legs do. I scribble that line. Certain professors will argue over its phrasing for years. Gandalf asks for 2 stout volunteers to carry a crate marked with an ink sketch of a fire drake. Sam and I oblige, and the weight surprises us. Not heavy, but persistent, humming faintly like distant bees trapped in a hollow log. The wizard warns us to keep the box level, else the contents might object to rough handling. I dare not open it, though an ember peeks through a loose plank and winks at me. We set our burden beside a ring of stones already laid for safe ignition. Gandalf rewards our service with slices of honey cake from somewhere inside his sleeves, crumbs warm as if baked moments earlier. Sam laughs at the impossibility, then eats to pieces to confirm the flavor was not hallucination. Later, Sam withdraws to tend his potatoes before supper, leaving me free to wander a sloping orchard painted gold by late afternoon light. Plum trees bow under the weight of deep purple fruit, skins mottled in places like bruised moons. A red fox saunters across the grass, pauses, and tilts its head as if evaluating my manners. Remembering tales that some creatures here carry more wit than expected, I offer a respectful greeting. The fox flicks its tail, sniffs, and continues on, perhaps having graded my courtesy as merely acceptable. I pick 3 plums, noting their sweetness and the curious absence of wasps that usually torment such harvests in my own century. Returning uphill, I find Bag End buzzing with quiet industry. Frodo stands at his round front door, rolling a map that keeps trying to unfurl in the breeze. He invites me inside for tea, and I step beneath a lintel carved with intricate leaves. Shelves curve along walls, packed with red-bound volumes, many penned in Elvish script. Together, we sip chamomile, while Frodo recounts how Bilbo once mistook a troll purse for a polite companion and nearly lost a thumb. The tale is delivered with a grin so mild you might miss it, a hallmark of hobbit storytelling that keeps humor tucked between sips. I respond with my own anecdote about the time a Victorian scholar attempted to cage lightning, and Frodo labels it ambitious lunacy with admirable restraint. The afternoon drifts toward evening. Outside, low clouds blush rose and tangerine as the sun dips behind the green hills. A hush falls over hobbit holes as lamps are lit, windows glowing like pockets of captured dawn. In the party field, Gandalf strikes a flint and murmurs a word that sounds older than stone. Suddenly, a swarm of luminous butterflies erupts skyward, each wing etched with runes of shifting color. They whirl above the field, forming first a shimmering crown and next the likeness of a sailing ship, before melting into drifting sparks that fade with sighs like distant surf. Applause rolls through the crowd, rich and rolling, as if the entire shire applauds itself. When the last spark dims, benches appear from nowhere, or perhaps they were always there, and I failed to notice in the spectacle. Platters of roasted mushrooms, tender taters, and crusty bread litter long tables. I find a seat beside a hobbit lass named Marigold, who teaches me how to smear ale butter on bread without losing a single crumb. She claims the secret is confidence, not pressure. Gandalf wanders by, refilling mugs from a wooden cask that never seems too empty. He proposes a toast to peaceful valleys and harmless curiosity. I echo the words, though I quietly toast the physics that allow such a cask to disobey capacity. Fireflies emerge at the field's edge, their green lanterns weaving lazy patterns, while a fiddler coaxes a tune that balances lively and soothing in equal measure. Sam taps my shoulder, points to the sky, and there streaks a final comet of emerald light that bursts into a silent bouquet above the party tree. The hush that follows is almost reverent, broken only by a child whispering that it looked like the Lady of the Wood. Distant crickets begin their night chant, steady and familiar, and the crowd slowly disperses, each hobbit carrying leftovers wrapped in leaves. I pocket a small seed from the party tree that floated down during the finale, planning to study its strange glow tomorrow. At last I return to my borrowed room, skin still warm from lantern light and cheeks sore from constant, quiet smiling. I jot notes until the candle gutters out, recording flavors, colors, and the precise timbre of hobbit laughter when mingled with crackling sparks. As sleep approaches, I consider that time here feels elastic, stretching to hold every scent and footstep without rush. I lay back beneath the lavender quilt, listening to leaves murmur outside the window, thinking that if all days in the Shire end with butterflies of starlight and bread thick with ale butter, my research may never conclude, and I find that prospect delightfully acceptable. A pale ribbon of dawn slips across the ceiling and rests on my closed eyes until the warmth coaxes them open. The lavender quilt smells faintly of last night's lantern smoke, a reminder that wonder can linger like perfume if given permission. I rise, stretching until every bone acknowledges the new day, and listen to the sleepy hush within Bag End. Somewhere in the pantry, a yeast loaf is rising, its crackling crust sending soft sighs through the quiet outside. A thrush pierces the hush with 3 bright notes, as if announcing that the sun has signed the attendance ledger. I dress in the same moss-green waistcoat, surprised to find it freshly brushed, then push open the round door and step barefoot onto cool flagstones still beaded with dew. The Shire at first light feels like a secret moment, shared only with those awake enough to notice. Smoke curls from a dozen tidy chimneys, making the air smell of applewood and promise. Across the lane, Hamfast, Gamgee stands beside his gate, pipe in one hand, watering can in the other, deciding which duty deserves priority. He lifts 2 fingers in greeting. "Mornin' to you, traveler," he says, eyes twinkling behind a fog of sweet leaf. I return the salute, noting the methodical inspection he gives each nasturtium leaf for slugs. The thoroughness resembles a general reviewing troops before parade. Somewhere beyond his picket fence, a rooster crows with operatic conviction, clearly pleased by his own echo. Inside the kitchen, an annotated breakfast lineup awaits. Bilbo, already fussing with jars of blackberry jam, ushers me to a seat as if my arrival was the final ingredient. He offers porridge flecked with raisins, a stack of butter-kissed oatcakes, and a small dish of bramble honey, explaining that honeybees east of the water collect from heather blossoms and therefore yield a gentler sweetness. I listen with academic attention while Frodo pours tea so dark it borders on philosophical. "What are your plans this bright morning?" Bilbo asks. I admit I intend to wander toward the Brandywine to chart regional bird calls. Bilbo nods approvingly, then warns that swans near Buckleberry can be territorial, especially before 11. With a satchel of scribbling tools, I set off along a winding lane where dandelions wave like yellow pennants. A light mist hugs the ground, curling around my ankles in wisps that vanish before I can study them. At a stile, I meet Mary Brandybuck, fresh from Buckland, carrying a bundle of letters tied with blue twine. He tips an imaginary hat and invites me to walk a mile together. He speaks of a rumor that elves were seen near the woody end 2 nights ago, voices like wind chimes drifting through the trees. Mary claims the melody described the moon's reflection on silver leaves, which raises my eyebrow since leaves seldom require lyrical analysis. He laughs and assures me hobbit ears can exaggerate after a pint or two. We part at a willow whose branches drape to the ground like green curtains. Near the river, I pause to catalogue the calls of larks and the distant bark of a lazy sheepdog. Suddenly, the stillness splinters as a white stag steps from the reeds, antlers gleaming as though dipped in moonlight. It regards me without alarm, dark eyes reflecting the rippling sky. I hold my breath, notebook forgotten, sensing this is no ordinary beast, but one of those gentle portents old tales treasure. The stag lowers its head in what feels like a courteous bow, then bounds across the shallows, hooves barely kissing the water's surface before vanishing into alder shadows. The splash rings in my ears long after silence returns. I jot frantic notes, aware that scholars will either celebrate or doubt every line, then notice a single silver hair caught on a briar stem. It shimmers between my fingers like a strand of forged moonbeam, warm despite the breeze. I tuck it into my journal, hoping its glow will not attract curious moths. The sun climbs higher, scattering the last hints of mist, and the river resumes its tranquil murmur. I turn back toward Hobbiton, shoes damp and heart humming, eager to recount the vision over second breakfast. As I walk, the memory of the stag's silent bow feels like a personal benediction, a quiet assurance that the day ahead holds more marvels than any map can predict. The sun stands high when I reach Bag End once more, and the household has kindly paused between second breakfast and elevenses so that I can catch up. Pippin greets me at the gate, crumbs of seed cake still clinging to his collar, and ushers me inside like a landlord worried the rent is late. Bilbo sets a fresh plate before me, thick slices of brown bread layered with cool cucumber and a pinch of salt, while Frodo passes a glass jar of strawberry preserve, whose ruby contents glow like captured dawn. Between bites, I recount the white stag, half expecting polite disbelief, yet my hosts accept the tale with delight, debating whether it hailed from the south woods or the skirts of the old forest, and whether stags find poetry more palatable than clover. When plates are cleared, Frodo suggests a tour of Bilbo's library, a room most scholars would gladly trade their spectacles to inhabit. Shelves rise like tree trunks, heavy with tales of Beleriand and glossaries of rare mushrooms, while a brass ladder glides along unseen rails with the dignity of a butler. I select a slim volume that records migratory habits of the black swan, penned in looping Elvish that shimmers as though letters recall their birthplace among starlit groves. Bilbo watches me puzzle over a phrase, then translates with an amused grin, explaining that the author believed swans sing twice, once for the stars and once for the sea. I copied the passage for later analysis, though I suspect its truth is found more in melody than measurement. Near midday I wander toward the mill, following a lane lined with foxglove, whose bells tremble whenever bees enter, like modest patrons of a cathedral. At the water wheel, I meet 2 dwarves, driving a small cart laden with polished ironwork bound for Michel delving. Their beards are woven with copper beads that catch the sun, and their voices rumble like kettle drums wrapped in velvet. They share a skin of cooled tea, scented with mint, and swap news of distant roads, mentioning that shadows stir again beyond the misty mountains, but their axes remain eager to discourage any nonsense. Before partying, they gift me a nail made of dwarf steel, claiming it holds doors firmer than any promise and will remind me of friends met where rivers sing. Curiosity pulls me next to the water, where willow roots knuckle into clear depths. I settle on a mossy rock and begin sketching river reeds. When the surface breaks with a gentle splash, a silver fish rises, yet instead of darting away, it hovers, fins sculling in place. Layers of sunlight ripple across its scales, revealing faint runes that trace each flank. The fish tips its head as though weighing a question, then flicks its tail to send 3 perfect rings across the pool before vanishing. I sit stunned, wondering if fresh air can inspire collective hallucination, but the rings widen and fade exactly as physics intends, suggesting the marvel was no mischief of mind. I bottle a vial of water nearby, hoping to find microscopic clues, though I suspect enchantment resists such simple study. Later, I cross a footbridge toward fields where farmer Maggot cultivates mushrooms so wide and flat they resemble umbrellas for discreet hobbits during sudden spring showers. His dogs greet me with theatrical barks, tails wagging in counterpoint, and the farmer himself waves a trowel like a marshal guiding geese. He offers a basket of chanterelles in exchange for any stories I carry lighter than gold, yet heavier than gossip. I repay him with the account of the silver fish, embellishing only slightly, and he laughs, claiming the water has been showing off ever since Tom Bombadil sang it awake at the dawn of ages. He pockets the tail like a good luck charm and presses an extra truffle into my hand for honesty. By the time I drift back toward Hobbiton, the sun has begun its slow westward lean, turning distant hilltops the color of warm butter. Shadows stretch across the lane, yet chatter and gentle clinks rise from windows as families prepare late afternoon tea. To watch a line of sparrows hop along a stone wall, each bird pecking exactly once before moving on, as if rehearsing a polite dance. The rhythm soothes the quiet corners of my mind, and I realize the afternoon has passed without hurry, every encounter fitting neatly like beads on a string. With satchel heavier and heart lighter, I return to Bag End, ready to compare notes with Bilbo before the kettles sing of evening. Lamplight blooms within Bag End as Bilbo ladles steaming rabbit stew into earthen bowls, the aroma of rosemary and caramelized onion curling through every corridor. Frodo sets cool flagons of pale cider on the table, bubbles climbing the glass like explorers with lanterns. Sam arrives last, cheeks ruddy from evening chores, and presents a bouquet of marjoram to freshen the air, a gesture that earns a grin from Bilbo. Pippin and Merry engage in spirited debate over whether turnip or carrot best absorbs gravy, their voices overlapping like sparrows, bickering over seed. I document the argument faithfully. Certain future culinary historians will applaud my diligence. Outside the round window, the sky deepens to velvet blue, a single bright star nailed above the party tree, as if whoever hung it wished to preview the night. After the final spoon scrapes the bowl, we carry lanterns to the party field, our path flickering across dew-kissed grass. Gandalf has gone, yet his earlier fireworks left a pleasant temps of copper in the air, a memory that tickles the nose. Beneath the great tree, a fiddler saws a reel, while a drum keeps lazy tempo, and hobbit pairs weave slow circles, bare feet scuffing soft earth. The dwarves from the mill reappear, presenting small iron charms that wedge between strings to brighten tone. Then join the dance with surprising grace for folk clad in heavy boots. I find myself pulled into the ring, spinning once with Marigold, whose laughter rises lighter than the fiddle, then with a lad who introduces himself mid-twirl as Tom, proud owner of the finest pumpkin patch in the district. When music settles into hush, Frodo beckons me toward the crest of the hill, a quiet slope just above the last roof chimneys. We sit on a fallen log, still warm from daylight, and survey constellations draped across the firmament. Frodo names them in the common speech, and then in ancient Quenya, the syllables sliding like water over polished stone, each name older than the eldest oak. Over the distant Brandywine, a meteor streaks silver, dissolving before it meets the horizon, and Frodo posits that such wanderers are messages exchanged between Varda and the dreaming world. I reply that in my time scholars call them stones and ice, yet I confess that neither explanation diminishes wonder. Back within Bag End, Bilbo retrieves a slim book of elven verse and reads a passage about starlight woven into cloaks, his voice steady, seasoned with reverence. Candle flames lean toward each word as though seeking translation. I place the silver hair of the stag on the table and watch it glow faintly, pulsing with slow rhythm, perhaps the very heartbeat of the forest. Bilbo studies it through a small lens, muttering that artifacts sometimes choose their own stories, and that the wise collector listens before labeling. He returns the hair to my palm and suggests I keep it near ink, for some relics encourage pens to behave better. At last, the house falls silent, save for the ticking clock and the soft sigh of embers settling into ash. I slip beneath the lavender quilt, now warmed by the day's stored sunlight, and feel fatigue unfold like a feathered cloak across my shoulders. The scent of marjoram drifts from the kitchen, mingling with the cool night air that creeps through a cracked window, carrying distant cricket song. I close my journal, satisfied that each moment has found safe harbor on the page, and allow my eyes to nest in darkness. Thoughts of silverfish, glowing hair, and silent meteors braid into gentle lullaby, and sleep arrives without argument, promising that dawn will polish the shire anew. A hush blankets the hill before dawn, a velvety stillness broken only by the soft purr of coals nesting deeper into the hearth. One timid ray of first light slips through a gap in the curtains, drapes itself across the quilt. I wake to a room tinted rose and amber, every polished beam wearing a faint glow, as though trying on summer for size. The air tastes of distant rain yet to fall, and the lingering echo of rosemary from last night's stew. I sit up slowly, savoring the way silence in Bag End feels less like absence and more like a familiar shawl wrapped about the shoulders of the house, comforting every hinge and floorboard. On tiptoe, I reach the round doorway so as not to wake Bilbo, who, despite an adventurous past, now guards his sleep with the determination of a dragon over treasure. Cool morning air greets me, brushed with mint and the shy perfume of sleeping flocks. Down the lane, the first chimney sends up a feather of smoke, thin and wandering, undecided on its destination. A thrush with speckled breast hops across the dewy grass, regards me with bright curiosity, and offers 3 quick notes of approval before launching into the clear sky. I nod my thanks in return, because here it feels impolite to ignore even the smallest greeting. The kitchen, already alive without human assistance, presents a modest miracle. A kettle, left on the stove last night, sighs in rhythm with quiet bubbles, as if it finished boiling hours ago and has simply waited in patient stasis. I pour the perfectly tempered water over a nest of chamomile and dried apple petals, watching the buds swirl like tiny golden galaxies. While the tea steeps, I slice a loaf of oat bread that Bilbo prepared yesterday afternoon, its crust dusted with flour and hope. The crumb is tender, flecked with sunflower seeds, which catch the window light like specks of hidden quartz. I whisper a customary hobbit blessing to honor the hands that prepared it, a ritual both charming and scientifically baffling. Footsteps approach, soft but purposeful. Samwise appears in the doorway, hair tousled like a haystack after a windstorm, yet eyes bright with purpose. "Morning to you," he says, voice thick with sleep yet kindness. He offers me a parcel wrapped in linen, explaining that Farmer Maggot sent along a sample of his latest truffle breed, rich as moonless soil. We unwrap the treasure to reveal black spheres that glisten faintly, almost humming with umami intent. Sam proposes we shave a sliver onto toasted bread and test its promise of unrivaled flavor. I agree wholeheartedly, scribbling a note that gastronomic research sometimes requires alarming quantities of butter. With breakfast complete, Sam invites me to accompany him to the south garden, where early blossoms await inspection. The path winds past hedgerows dotted with morning glory, each trumpet bloom folded tight like a secret letter. Sam kneels beside a modest bed of strawberries and lifts a leaf to reveal jade-green berries blushing pale pink at the tip, promising sweetness within days. He explains the art of coaxing extra sun by tilting flat stones beneath the plants, reflecting light upward so each berry ripens evenly. I jot this method, marveling at the fusion of horticulture and quiet wizardry that permeates the shire. Somewhere beyond the fence, a cow bellows, clearly impatient for breakfast of its own. We wander toward the water, carrying small tins of compost tea, which Sam sprinkles at the roots of young willows. The river glimmers under the rising sun, surface freckled by shallow ripples that drift like lazy thought. I sketch the scene but pause when a single white feather spirals from the sky, landing at my feet without a breath of wind to guide it. Sam examines the feather, notes the unusual iridescent sheen, and muses it might belong to a swan king of distant wetlands. He tucks it behind my ear for safekeeping, declaring its scholarly flair. The gesture catches me off guard, though the feather settles with regal comfort, as if pleased to rest near ink and parchment. From the water we follow a footpath lined with foxglove towers, their bells heavy with dew. A distant whistle drifts across the fields, low and haunting, carrying a melody I cannot recognize. Sam hushes me, then identifies the tune as a ranger's dawn call, a signal shared among watchful souls who patrol boundaries invisible to most. Moments later, a tall figure in weathered cloak emerges between alder trunks. The ranger raises a hand in greeting, sharp eyes softening as he notices Sam. He offers news that a band of dwarves seeks safe road eastward, and that a certain inn near Bree still boasts the finest onion soup west of the mountains. He departs with a nod, boots silent on the wet earth, leaving only a faint scent of pine and distant roads. We return to Bag End just as Bilbo appears on the threshold in a robe the color of ripe peaches, blinking at the light like a badger disturbed from a pleasant dream. He sniffs the air, detects truffle, and rewards our early foraging with indulgent approval. Frodo follows, carrying a stack of blank parchment sheets nearly as tall as a small child, intent on cataloging every mushroom variety within 20 miles. I fetch my journal and together we lay out plans for the day, sketching routes, noting the optimal snack windows, and debating whether pockets should be lined with parchment or pastry. The morning stretches, unhurried, as the sun climbs higher, promising yet another chapter of gentle marvels to anyone willing to watch closely and walk slowly. Afternoon drifts in like a soft tide. The kitchen brightens with purpose. Bilbo steeps nettle tea and arranges cold chicken on oat bread brushed with mustard from an iron mortar. Sunlight through the round window turns jars of apricot jam into tiny stained glass lanterns. We gather as eager scholars, each armed with fork, quill, and curiosity. Frodo spreads a map of Eastfarthing that still smells of wet ink and suggests seeking a meadow famed for a broad ring of fairy mushrooms. Pippin applauds. Sam nods with gardener pride. Merry tests compass bearings, and I polish my pencil as though cramming for a gentle exam. Outside, the thrush repeats its three-note greeting in approval, while Bilbo slides a tin of candied ginger into Sam's pack and calls it brave fuel. Our party sets out along the dusty lane, grasshoppers springing away like popped kernels around our boots. The afternoon sun rests warm but courteous upon shoulders, softened by a breeze scented with cut clover. Two dwarves from the mill overtake us in a pony cart, jingling with fresh horseshoes, and offer a lift. We decline, but walk beside them, trading observations. They boast that the local iron sings sweeter than any they have forged since departing the Blue Mountains, and invite us to witness a field-smithing display near the old quarry later. Pippin volunteers to pump bellows, already seeing fountains of sparks, while a skylark spirals overhead, scattering notes across the blue canvas. An hour of pleasant strides brings us to the meadow, a gentle bowl woven with buttercups and tall rye that sways like a sleepy audience. Near its center, a perfect circle of mushrooms stands shoulder to shoulder, caps broad and ivory, edges trimmed with pale violet fringe. Sam kneels with reverence, lifting one cap only enough to glimpse the gills, then settles it back. As found, he whispers that no ordinary spores craft such symmetry. Frodo traces the ring with a hazel rod, murmuring an elvish charm, more prayer than spell. Pippin steps inside and announces that he feels lighter, as though pockets have forgotten their own weight, and promptly spins until dizziness insists on pause. A breeze curls through the rye, and the mushrooms shimmer as if greeting an unseen guest. From within the stalks appears a creature no taller than a rabbit, skin the tint of lichen, eyes like polished seeds. The sprite bows, making a sound that resembles wind passing through reeds. Sam and I hover between awe and academic hunger. Frodo offers a respectful Quenya greeting, meaning, "May your roots drink deep." The sprite reaches into the soil, lifts a crystal droplet of dew impossible at this hour, and places it in Sam's cupped hands. The droplet dissolves to mist that cools our faces with fragrance of pine and distant waterfalls before slipping away on the breeze. Leaving the meadow with spirits noticeably bright, we follow the dwarves to a flat rise near the quarry where a forge box glows like sunrise. The bellows heaves under Pippin's eager pools, feeding coals until they shine white and eager. The smith draws out a slender bar of iron, shaping a leaf blade that curls at the tip like newborn fern. Each hammer stroke rings across the valley, chased by orange sparks that settle on grass, yet leave no scorch, hints of quiet runes etched along the anvil rim. Mary applauds each rhythm, counting beats as though attending a lively symphony rehearsal in the open air. Dark clouds gather from the west, trailing veils of silver that hiss over distant hills. The smith quenches the glowing blade just as the first fat drops arrive. We shuffle beneath the vast elm whose hollow trunk offers shelter, scented of sap and long stories. Pippin withdraws a fiddle from waxed cloth and teases a tune that skips between raindrops like children on wet stones. The dwarves answer with a deep harmony in Khuzdal, praising ore that sleeps below mountains. I jot phonetic hints, conscious that few visitors record such melody, let alone during an impromptu picnic with rain and sparks sharing the same stage. The shower passes quickly, leaving every leaf glazed with trembling jewels. We reach Bywater, where the market hums beneath striped awnings, still dripping in cadence. A traveling peddler with silver beard and amber eyes invites us to inspect crystal spheres that capture single perfect moments. He demonstrates with an orb now holding the image of rain dancing upon glowing coals, suspended forever inside glass. Frodo chooses a smaller marble, said to recall birdsong only, reasoning it will weigh less on long walks. I purchase a blank sphere, determined to test its secrets later, though I suspect enchantment cares little for laboratory method. With packs heavier and minds humming, we begin our return, the lane lit by amber beams stretching through hedges. Upon a ridge we glimpse tall silhouettes gliding east, cloaked figures crowned by the low sun. Their voices float upon the breeze, a chord shimmering like glass washed by rain. Even the ponies pause, ears pointed to savor the harmony. One elf lifts a slender hand in silent salute before the procession slips beyond the hill. A hush lingers until Pippin declares that supper now feels dramatically overdue, breaking the spell. Laughter follows, clear and content, as we descend toward the welcoming glow of Hobbiton and the promise of a table already set. Twilight folds itself across the shire like a quilt fresh from the mending basket, every crease glowing with the last ember of sunset. Our party reaches Bag End just as the round door exhales warm lamplight onto the flagstones. Bilbo welcomes us with mock severity, demanding an inventory of discovered mushrooms before anyone touches the supper kettle. Sam presents the fairy ring sketch with quiet pride. Pippin waves the tin of candied ginger like a captured flag, and Merry plunks the new iron leaf blade onto the table, where it rings a bright salute. Bilbo relents, declares the hall respectable, and sets about ladling leek and barley soup into deep bowls, while hot seed cakes wait on the hearth. The aroma of thyme, butter, and roasted garlic stitches itself into my memory with thread stronger than any scholarly footnote. During the meal, the dwarven smith tells the tale of the blade he forged that afternoon. A leaf-shaped dagger, meant for trimming vines, yet sturdy enough to put fear into any lurking goblin. He taps the hilt against the rim of his mug, and the metal sings a high, clear note that silences even Pippin mid-chew. Bilbo raises an eyebrow and recalls an evening long ago when Thorin's company filled the same hall with merriment and orchestral belching. Frodo blushes on their behalf, while Sam thoughtfully scoops extra soup to encourage diplomacy. I chart each exchange in my journal, noting that humor among hobbits flows like cider, sparkling and mildly disarming, especially when accompanied by crusty bread. When bowls stand empty and spoons clink their farewell, Bilbo dims the lamps, suggesting a stroll to aid digestion and perhaps spy the newly washed stars. We follow a path up the hill where grass still glitters with rain pearls from the passing shower. The dwarves lag behind to admire stonework, while Pippin practices dramatic lunges with his vine blade. each thrust drawing imaginary applause from unseen crowds. At the summit, Frodo lifts his crystal marble, tilts it toward the heavens, and the sphere answers by blooming with silver swirls that mimic the wheel of the night sky. Gasps escape even the dwarves, who rarely concede astonishment without bargaining rights. As we watch the marble two meteors streak overhead, leaving pale contrails that appear to dance within the glass, tracing an orbit of light around a heart of stillness, Frodo whispers that perhaps the orb listens, not merely reflects, capturing echoes of celestial conversation. I test my blank sphere, hold it to my ear, and hear a faint chime like distant bells beneath deep water. The sound fades when I lower it, but a residual tingling remains along my fingertips, as though the moment filed itself between skin and bone for future study. Sam declares the sphere's respectable magic and pockets his dewdroplet bottle in solidarity. A sudden hush ripples through the grass, as if every blade leans southward. From across the water drifts a low howl, not threatening, more mournful than menace. Perhaps a lone warg banished by kin, or a wandering hound searching for a lost campfire. The dwarves set hands to their beards in caution, while Merry hums a calming tune he claims confuses hungry spirits. Out of the shadow steps the ranger we saw that morning, cloak darker than the night behind him, eyes reflecting starlight like twin coins. He assures us the howl belongs to no warg, rather a shy hound tracking the scent of its master, traveling west. He bows and fades once more, boots silent on moss, leaving relief and a swirl of pine-scented air. Back in Bag End, Bilbo sets a small candelabrum beside the guest bed and gifts me a faded map of the Tower Hills, saying, "A proper traveler always keeps one eye to journeys ahead." I tuck the silver stag hair inside the map fold, where it gleams softly, as if pleased with its new archive. The blanket welcomes me with the smell of lavender and distant hearths. Outside, the thrush releases a single note, perhaps guarding the hill through darkness. I close my journal, heart buzzing with chimes and whispers of meteor dust, and let sleep wrap around me like a friendly cloak stitched by all the hands I have met in this gentle corner of Middle-earth. A pale hush settles over Bag End before dawn, and I lie awake listening to the slow breathing of the house, a rhythm so steady it might be the pulse of the very hill itself. At the first glimmer of light, I crack the round window, and cool air sweeps in, tinged with rain-washed earth, and a faint sweetness that reminds me of distant orchards blooming out of season. Somewhere down the slope, a milk cow lowing for the pail offers 3 plaintive notes that echo through the mist, answered by the triumphant crow of a rooster who evidently believes he conducted the sunrise himself. I dress in silence, slip on the moss-green waistcoat, now peppered with faint chalk where I leaned against Bilbo's ledger, and step into the corridor where candle stubs still faintly glow like sleepy fireflies, reluctant to surrender the night. In the kitchen, I discover Bilbo already perched on a stool, quill in hand, annotating the margins of a recipe for mushroom tart, as though it were a diplomatic treaty. He greets me without looking up, murmuring that any respectable pastry requires the cooperation of butter and patience in equal measure. On the hearth, a pot of barley porridge simmers, surface dotted with thick cream and curls of dried cranberry that rise and fall like tiny red barges on a gentle sea. I fetch 2 bowls, and we share the meal in companionable, quiet spoons, tapping soft percussion, while the clock over the lintel marks each contented second. Between sips of nettle tea, Bilbo mentions that the post rider brought a sealed note from Michelle Delving, delivered at dawn by a pony whose hooves flashed silver in the lantern light. He has not opened it, claiming letters are more courteous when witnessed by curious company, so we break the wax together. The parchment unfolds to reveal a formal invitation from the Matham house requesting the loan of one particular artifact, the crystal sphere that Frodo acquired just yesterday. The curator writes that such a treasure would complete an exhibit titled Light Captured and Kept, to open at midsummer. Bilbo frowns thoughtfully, tapping the page as if coaxing further details from the fibers. He decides the matter requires consensus, so we agree that Frodo should weigh in after breakfast, though Bilbo chuckles that his nephew may loathe the thought of surrendering a toy so soon. Outside, a timid knock rattles the door. Sam enters, balancing a wicker basket brimming with sage, marigold petals, and a single enormous toadstool whose spotted cap resembles a miniature firmament of white stars scattered across deep crimson. Sam explains that he discovered the toadstool at the edge of Farmer Cotton's turnip field, growing alone and humming quietly. An observation I confirm the moment I lean close and catch a faint musical vibration, like wind chimes heard through water. Bilbo fetches a pewter tray, and we set the specimen upon cushioned cloth, resolving to consult an herbal compendium before considering stew or study. Sam then produces a parcel wrapped in waxed paper containing scones flecked with rosemary and cracked pepper. We toast them over the coals, slather with honey, and the resulting flavor convinces me that culinary alchemy thrives in the Shire. Sam accepts the compliment with a blush, yet adds that honest soil does most of the labor, while hobbits only coax the result. Just as the last crumbs vanish, Pippin and Merry tumble in, laughing about a contest to see who could balance longest upon the narrow rail of the garden gate. Their boots are speckled with dew and triumph, and they beg news of fresh adventures. Bilbo gestures toward the humming toadstool and the invitation scroll, setting the stage for spirited debate. Frodo appears, crystal sphere tucked beneath one arm, and listens while pouring fragrant Southfarthing tea into mismatched mugs. He traces the engraved seal of the Matham house and admits the exhibit would delight many visitors, yet his eyes linger on the swirling lights trapped inside the orb with a fondness that is half scholarly, half childlike wonder. After a solemn moment, he agrees to lend it, provided he may escort the sphere and document its display, a condition unanimously celebrated with clinks of pottery. Plans begin to sprout like mushrooms after rain. Merry suggests turning the journey into a proper excursion, complete with blankets, bait for fishing, and a promise to visit the famed cheese market of Little Delving. Pippin volunteers to oversee provisioning, certain that no venture flourishes without a surplus of seed cake. Sam notes that his garden can spare several jars of pickled beetroot, an offer met with polite nods, though Pippin visibly calculates how to bury jars beneath layers of jam to protect sweeter priorities. Bilbo drafts a travel list on crisp vellum, while I sketch a small map highlighting inns along the route where Second Breakfast enjoys high reputation. The morning sunlight now pours through the window in broad golden stripes, illuminating motes of dust that drift like lazy comets, and I pause to marvel at how swiftly a simple letter can rearrange the orbit of an entire household. Before the company scatters to gather supplies, a soft chime echoes through the room, subtle yet unmistakable. The humming toadstool pulses once, emitting a cool violet glow, then settles into stillness as though merely clearing its throat. Frodo raises an eyebrow in silent query. Bilbo reaches for a magnifying lens. and Sam whispers that perhaps the fungus approves of travel plans or disapproves of idle chatter, difficult to tell. I note the phenomenon with steady hand, reflecting that every dawn in the Shire seems to unwrap a fresh mystery, each more politely wondrous than the last. We resolve to carry the toadstool in a vented crate, both as specimen and perhaps as sentient guide, and with that decision the morning gently tips toward midday, promising roads yet walked and stories eager to be told. Sun stands high above the hill when our ad hoc expedition spills into the yard, intent on transforming vague enthusiasm into precise logistics. Sam and Pippin wrestle the humming toadstool into a slotted beechwood crate lined with damp moss, so its cap clears the rim like a crowned head on parade. Every time the fungus releases its faint musical drone, a shimmer of violet light leaks through the slats and startles the chickens pecking nearby, causing a flutter of feathers that looks suspiciously choreographed. Bilbo observes, with quill poised, noting frequency of hums, while Frodo tests the lid twice to confirm that no curious breeze can jostle our spongy passenger. I tighten the straps and feel the crate vibrate against my palms like a small, cordial harp seeking an audience. We set off toward Hobbiton Market Square, carts rattling past in both directions, loaded with sheaves of early rye and baskets of spring radishes glazed with soil. The afternoon air is warm but polite, tempered by a playful wind carrying smells of mint, leather, and something faintly resinous that I later identify as dwarf forge oil. Mary leads a lively debate about whether to wheels or for Grant's superior pumpkin stability, while Pippin purchases entire racks of seed cake on the premise that surplus is an act of civic duty. At a herb stand, Sam secures tins of ginger, wild thyme, and a tightly corked bottle of bay leaf essence said to soothe rattled stomachs, an insurance policy for whoever must sit closest to the toadstool. In the bustle, a tabby cat with one torn ear sidles up to the crate, drawn by its whispered melody. The violet glow sharpens, spilling onto cobbles in a pattern that resembles scattered constellations, and for a fleeting moment the cat grows impossibly tall, shadow stretching across stalls like a prowling tiger of legend. Market chatter hushes, then resumes in stunned whispers as the shadow shrinks again to domestic proportions. Bilbo mutters that feline curiosity has always been a gateway to grand illusions, then flips a copper coin to the bewildered fishmonger whose buckets have just witnessed an eclipse of normalcy. I jot a theory that the toadstool amplifies idle wonder into shared spectacle when prompted by living intent. Further along, we encounter the same dwarven smiths, now manning a portable anvil under a striped awning. They display travel locks forged from folded steel, each etched with interlocking leaves that echo the shape of our vine blade. Frodo requests a clasp for the crystal sphere and a matching latch for the toadstool crate, reasoning that artifacts deserve equal security. Sparks fly in golden arcs as the smith chants a low rhythmic verse, and within moments 2 locks emerge warm and gleaming, their surfaces cooled quickly under a dip in thyme-scented water. Payment is refused, replaced by a toast of chilled mead poured from a flask that seems larger inside than its brass walls should permit. Supplies gathered, we retreat to the shade of the party tree, unpacking findings onto a checked cloth that Pippin insists improves morale by 30%. Afternoon light filters through new leaves, dappling bread, wheels, and jars, until every item looks blessed by tiny suns. Bilbo reads aloud the itinerary, squinting whenever a margin sprouts another enthusiastic side note from Mary. while Sam strings twine through cork stoppers to prevent essential sauces from deserting wagons on rough paths. The toadstool hums a soft chord, lower now, as if settling into companionship. I lean back against a root, watch clouds migrate like slow white ships, and feel the gentle gravity of impending travel pull all our thoughts into a shared horizon. Barely an hour after our picnic concludes, the planning table blossoms into controlled chaos. Bilbo dictates a list that grows longer than a dragon's memory, adding jars of elderberry jam after noticing Pippin smuggling 2 under his vest, then insisting on spare quills and oilcloth to keep diaries safe from weather and overenthusiastic gravy. Mary volunteers to organize weight distribution, yet is promptly distracted by the discovery that seed cakes stack into surprisingly stable towers. Every time one topples, the humming toadstool emits a sympathetic chord that ripples through its moss-padded crate and sets nearby butter knives vibrating like timid tuning forks. Frodo observes the resonance with scholarly glee, noting pitch variations according to collapse height, while Sam mutters something about pastry physics, better left unstudied, lest it invite second breakfast detours. Once inventories sit in neat columns, we follow Sam down a lane lined with flowering hawthorn to inspect the cart Gandalf loaned earlier that year. Its wheels sport fresh iron bands engraved by the dwarves with curling runes shaped like ivy vines. To test ballast balance, Sam places the toadstool crate in the center, tucking spare blankets around the sides until the hum lowers to a mellow purr, as though the fungus approves its new throne. Pippin straps the crystal sphere box beside it, then overrules his own earlier pastry tower in favor of distributing jam jars along the front to act as edible shock absorbers. Frodo tries the new leaf-shaped lock on the cart gate. It clicks closed with a chime so pure a thrush answers from the hedgerow, apparently convinced rehearsal has begun for some avian recital. Curiosity leads us across the water to the old stone footbridge, where willows dip green fingers into glassy depths. There the sunlight tumbles through ripples, forming puzzle pieces of gold that slide over our boots. I pause to sketch reflections when sudden movement parts the surface. A trio of silver minnows leap, yet linger mid-air longer than natural law allows, suspended in a sparkling arch that frames the crate behind us. The toadstool responds with a lilting trill, higher than any earlier note, and the fish drift down as softly as petals, leaving concentric rings that drift toward the bridge pilings. Sam whispers that rivers sometimes applaud bold travelers with such spectacles, a notion I record under folklore worthy of future peer review. We wander next to an orchard where early pears swell beneath leaves still bright with spring green. The air carries the warm scent of dandelion honey and the steady drone of bees orbiting blossoms. An owl swoops low despite daylight, landing on a stump beside Bilbo's feet with the calm authority of a librarian. In its talons, it holds a single acorn etched with a spiral pattern that glows faintly. The owl places the acorn on Bilbo's open palm, then lifts off, silent as dusk on velvet. Pippin theorizes gift acorns sprout shortcuts if planted under full moons. Mary argues they merely summon hearty lunches. Bilbo pockets the seed for experimentation, promising only that any resulting tree will receive polite conversation at least once a week. By late afternoon, we return to Bag End to harness the sturdy pony, Chestnut, who eyes our mountain of provisions with resigned patience. Frodo and Sam engineer a lattice of ropes so every crate sits snug, while allowing airflow for truffle and toadstool alike. My own journal earns a cushioned nook near the front bench, protected by an overcoat smelling faintly of pipeweed and elderflower. A brief mishap occurs when Pippin trips on the tarp, sending a jar of pickled beetroot rolling toward the garden gate. The toadstool emits a sharp, reprimanding note, prompting a quick rescue and more secure knot work. Laughter bubbles through chores like spring water over stones, lightening the weight of preparations faster than any reduction in cargo could. Shadows lengthen across the lane as sunbeams tilt, painting every cobble with stripes of amber and lavender. We gather once more beneath the party tree for a final council over mugs of mint tisane sweetened with ginger syrup. The toadstool's hum has settled into a calm drone that harmonizes with distant cricket song, and the crystal sphere within Frodo's lap flickers soft stars across his waistcoat. Bilbo raises his cup in toast, declaring that roads guide feet, yet friendships guide hearts, and that both feel lighter when jam supply is plentiful. A gentle breeze answers by ringing oak leaves together like distant bells, and even chestnut stamps once, as though sealing the covenant. Tomorrow we roll westward, Michelle delving, but this lingering afternoon closes with a promised spun of music, pastry, and quiet magic, tucked safely beneath the first evening star. Stars bloom, one by one, above the hill, while a lemon slice of moon hovers low in the east, its pale light brushing bag end with silver dust. Inside the kitchen, Bilbo stirs a pot of lentil stew, enriched with a generous pour of last summer's tomato preserve. The mixture sending up a perfume of basil and sweet earth that drifts through every corridor. We arrange ourselves around the polished oak table as bowls appear, each rim catching candlelight like a soft halo. Sam brings warm rolls glazed with honey and sunflower seeds. Frodo carries the crystal sphere, which now flickers with distant constellations, and Pippin unveils a cheese round so ambitious it requires its own chair. The toadstool crate rests nearby, humming a mellow chord that settles nerves the way a lullaby calms restless foals. Conversation meanders, from route planning to the best vantage points for dawn rabbits, finally spiraling into speculation on whether clouds prefer square or round shadows, a debate that ends only when second helpings win the floor. After supper, Bilbo dims the lamps and suggests a candlelit inspection of our enchanted freight to ensure nothing sulks or schemes in the dark. We lift the crate lid slightly, just enough for moonlight to kiss the toadstool cap. At once the fungus releases a silvery hum so pure it vibrates through cutlery, causing spoons to chime in neat harmony. The violet glow flares, and for a heartbeat, the crate interior resembles a miniature ballroom, where tiny motes swirl like dancers in luminous gowns. Frodo's sphere responds with a swirl of nebulae, and strands of soft light arc between the orb and the mushroom, forming a delicate bridge that thrums like a harp string plucked by unseen fingers. We watch breathless until the glow fades back to dusk and the utensils settle with embarrassed clinks. Bilbo records the event under the heading Mutual Cordiality Among Portable Wonders, noting that politeness appears contagious even across species. Lanterns in hand, we stroll outside to give restless imaginations some cool air. Chestnut nibbles at grass near the cart, his breath puffing small clouds in the cool night. The stars are bright enough to reveal every scene in the sky, and Sam points out the hunter and the sickle, while Mary claims a cluster that resembles a wheel of seed cake, naming it Pippinus Major to the delight of its buttery namesake. Along the lane, a single firefly flickers, then another, until whole pockets of the dark field sparkle with tiny lanterns echoing our own. The toadstool hears their chorus and releases a faint high note, and for a moment every firefly in sight rises in a gentle spiral, weaving a glowing helix around the cart before drifting back among dandelion clocks. I jot the episode as spontaneous choreography prompted by fungal conductor, then underline the phrase, because even I doubt my future recollection will accept it without proof. A soft rustle draws our eyes to the far end of the garden, where the owl from earlier perches upon a fence post, wings folded like scholarly robes. It tilts its head and drops the spiral acorn onto freshly turned soil, then hovers without flapping, as if the very air has decided to hold it steady. The ground stirs and the acorn sinks, leaving behind a faint ring of golden moss that glimmers for 3 slow breaths before dimming into ordinary green. The owl blinks once satisfied and vanishes into the black branches of the party tree. Bilbo murmurs that some seeds skip the bother of seasons when deeds for the road require swift roots. We agree to inspect the spot at dawn, though Pippin wonders aloud if jam vines may sprout overnight, and Merry volunteers to taste test any experimental fruit on principle. Back inside, embers settle in the hearth, ticking softly like distant carriage wheels fading into fog. Frodo tucks the sphere into a padded pouch, Sam dampens the moss in the toadstool crate, and Bilbo secures the new leaf-shaped lock on the front door, the mechanism chiming a single clear note that echoes the earlier harmony. I retire to the guest room, where moonlight washes the quilt in ghostly stripes. My journal lies open, pages crowded with notes on glowing spores, musical insects, and an owl that plants acorns by moon decree. As I write, the toadstool hum drifts through the floorboards, a gentle bass line beneath the steady tempo of crickets, and I feel sleep wrap around me like a soft cloak threaded with starlight. Tomorrow the wheels will turn west, toward Michel Delving, but tonight the Shire rocks our little company in a cradle of quiet wonders, reminding us that every great journey begins with the promise of a story worth carrying home. Dawn arrives, dressed in pearl-gray mist that clings to the hill like a cat reluctant to vacate a warm chair. I wake before the rooster, stirred by a faint vibration that thrums through the floorboards, the traveling toadstool announcing its readiness with a low musical purr. When I lift the curtain, the garden shimmers, every spider web strung with dew that magnifies first light into hundreds of tiny suns. At the patch where the owl planted the spiral acorn last night, a ring of tender shoots already crowns the soil, each blade tipped with gold. Bilbo inspects them in slippers, declares that accelerated botany is best admired before tea lest reason spoil appreciation. In the kitchen breakfast musters its forces, Sam stands over the range, coaxing skillet cakes to bronze perfection, while Pippin polishes tin mugs with a vigor suggesting promotion depends on shine. The air smells of buckwheat, cinnamon, and wood smoke. Frodo sets the crystal sphere in the window so it catches sunrise. Silver swirls bloom within and cast gentle ripples across the walls, turning the room into an underwater chapel of light. Bilbo reads the travel list aloud between bites, checking jam counts, spare socks, and the diplomatic parchment authorizing the sphere's temporary loan to the Matham house. I add ink tablets to the manifest and am applauded for responsible scholarship at the breakfast table. Before we load the cart, we walk out to the new sprout circle. Overnight growth has produced delicate leaves shaped like tiny curled scrolls, veined in pale copper. When I lay a finger against one, a faint ringing travels up my arm, as if the sap carries bells. Bilbo plants a painted marker stake, bearing the date so future visitors will know the moment a moon acorn took root. Sam waters lightly, reminding all present that even enchanted seedlings prefer moderation. Pippin proposes naming the tree Jam Hope, but is overruled until we see if fruit appears edible. The toadstool hums to approving notes from its crate, which I record as neutral endorsement. Loading commences in orderly fashion that would satisfy most quartermasters and at least 2 fussy archivists. Chestnut, the pony, snorts once, then stands patient as Sam settles the crate amid folded blankets, jars of pickled beetroot, and the ambitious cheese round. Frodo lashes the sphere case beside Bilbo's writing box, and Merry secures the vine blade within easy reach in case brambles or argumentative pastry tins bar our way. I wedge my journal under a coil of rope and tuck the moon acorn leaves from yesterday between waxed sheets, establishing a mobile herbarium. When Bilbo tightens the final strap, the leaf-shaped lock clicks, releasing a clear chime, answered by the thrush on the fence. Departure music achieved. We rolled down the lane from Bag End, wheels crunching over gravel damp from night mist. Hobbiton yawns awake around us. Chimneys puff, gentle columns, gardens breathe steam, and children in nightshirts wave wooden spoons like ceremonial banners. At the mill, the water wheel flings diamonds of spray into morning sun. The miller's wife tosses us a cloth bundle of bran muffins, shouting that scholars forget lunch when notebooks get loud. Pippin bows grandly from the cart seat and nearly drops the reins, rescued by Sam, who suggests fewer flourishes until after second breakfast. I note the exchange as evidence that comedy travels well on wooden wheels. Crossing the stone bridge over the water, we pause to let Chestnut drink. The stream runs clear, showing pebbles patterned like pocket constellations. Our crate companion releases a bright trill. At once, a school of minnows gathers in spiral formation around the reflection of the toadstool shadow, turning the water into a spinning coin of silver scales. Frodo lowers the sphere to the surface, and it captures a brief flash, storing within its glass a miniature whirlpool of light that continues slow rotation even after he lifts it away. Bilbo proclaims the moment definitive proof that collaboration between fungus and mineral promotes aquatic enthusiasm. I underline the observation, resisting urge to add applause marks. Beyond the bridge, the road climbs between hedgerows, heavy with hawthorn bloom. A breeze shakes petals free, so that white confetti rains over us, settling across our hats and the pony's mane. Merry claims the trees celebrate our expedition. Sam counters that hawthorn simply scratches where it itches. Still, the petals fall in oddly regular bursts. Whenever the toadstool hums, as though the shrubs keep tempo, we pass a quick post-rider trotting east, who salutes the Matham letter tucked in Bilbo's vest and promises clean stables waiting at Waymeet should we stop. Hospitality in the Shire appears to travel faster than dust. Mid-morning finds us at a gentle rise that offers first distant glimpse of the White Downs. Sunlight lays long stripes across the hills, and far off a shimmer hints at the chalk faces that give the downs their name. Frodo explains that weather often gathers their like thoughts, collecting at the edge of sleep, then spills rain across Westfarthing in thoughtful intervals. I sketch the profile, while Pippin hunts for snacks and returns with a pocket of peppermints traded from a passing tinker. The tinker's wagon bore lanterns, shaped like dragonflies, that flapped when wheels hit bumps, a mechanical curiosity I vow to replicate with safer hinges once I reacquaint myself with my own century. We stop for second breakfast in a meadow stitched with clover. Sam spreads a cloth, produces skillet cakes wrapped in linen still warm, and layers them with elderberry jam. Chestnut grazes near buttercups, and the toadstool crate pulses, a contented bass that vibrates through the ground like a cat purring beneath floorboards. Frodo balances the crystal sphere atop an overturned bucket, and it projects tiny motes over the cloth, so each jam smear wears a constellation. Bilbo warns that spilled jam becomes historical evidence if allowed to dry on documents. I shield my journal accordingly. Mary invents a travel toast. 2 roads that rise kindly, carts that squeak in tune, and friends who share the last crumb without audit. Resuming travel, we encounter a hedgehog stalled in the road, nose buried in a puddle that mirrors the morning sky. Pippin halts the cart, hops down, and learns the creature wedged its quills in a twist of briar. Sam snips the snare with pocket shears, while the toadstool hums a soft encouragement. Freed, the hedgehog shakes and reveals a narrow collar woven of fine silver thread engraved with flowing script. Bilbo reads the inscription aloud, discovering it belongs to a young lass of the Tookland who trains hedgehogs to patrol slug lines in her vegetable beds. We set the traveler gently atop a moss hummock facing homeward and attach a note under the collar requesting a recipe for her famed slug-safe lettuce. As noon edges closer, the land opens into rolling fields that smell of sun-warmed wheat and distant cheese. Waymeet lies ahead where roads from Tuckborough and Michelle delving cross like threads in a loom. The sky brightens, clouds thinned to gauze, while larks scribble music overhead. Our company falls into an easy silence, broken only by rhythmic creak of wheels and periodic culinary forecasts from Bilbo. I lean back, letting the cart sway, and feel the weight of time loosen. The Shire morning stretches generous and golden before us, promising that whatever wonders still wait along the West Road will unfold at a pace kind to travelers who prefer to notice everything. Waymeet greets us with low stone walls, softened by creeping time, and benches carved from fallen beech, long polished by lingering conversations. Noon bells from the tiny chapel mark our arrival, with 4 gentle peals that echo across intersecting lanes like polite applause. Market stalls cluster beneath striped awnings, the canvas fluttering in a wind scented with nutmeg and sheared wool. Sam steers Chestnut toward a shaded trough, while Pippin darts ahead in search of pastries rumored to be stuffed with apple and clove. A cooper tests barrel hoops by rolling them in lazy spirals down the green, each clang answered by the toadstool crate, which hums a complimentary note, turning utilitarian clatter into accidental duet that draws curious glances and several approving nods. We park near the smithy, where dwarf hammers rise and fall in a rhythm both ancient and reassuring, bright sparks drifting like embers of captured daylight. Frodo negotiates for fresh horseshoe nails, while Mary studies a rack of small brass whistles shaped like acorns, claiming their tone repels midges. Bilbo hands the smith a sealed letter addressed to a cousin in Needlehole, the envelope bearing an inky dragon caricature that elicits a chuckle deep as thunder under blankets. I linger by the forge, mesmerized by metal glowing sunset orange, and note how the smith cools completed shapes in lavender water, the perfumed steam weaving a ghost of summer meadows through hot air. Beyond the anvil, a tanner displays leather satchels dyed with walnut husk and green woad. Sam inspects buckles for our rope kit and discovers a side pocket perfectly sized for the moon acorn leaves, now pressed between wax sheets. The tanner tells a tale of a wandering entwife who once blessed his dye vats, imparting hues that never fade even beneath mountain snow. Bilbo purchases a narrow strap to secure the crystal sphere, reasoning that mythic endorsement warrants small indulgence. As coins change hands, the toadstool offers a brief ascending trill, perhaps praising fiscal prudence, though Pippin swears it simply likes the smell of woad. Lunch unfolds beneath an elder tree, whose twisted branches sway like sleepy serpents in the breeze. Sam slices hard cheese, Pippin procures those famed apple pastries, and Mary uncorks ginger cordial that fizzes with eager bubbles. The crystal sphere rests on a folded blanket, reflecting clouds that drift slowly past, each puff morphing into unwritten stories upon glass. Children from the village gather at a respectful distance, attracted by soft music from the toadstool crate. Frodo lifts the lid a finger's breadth, and violet glow spills across the grass, prompting oohs and ahs. Bilbo delivers an impromptu lecture on safe wonder consumption, instructing the children to observe gently and dream boldly, advice they pocket like marbles. When plates stand empty, we repack and roll west, wagon wheels crunching on gravel that flickers with mica. Fields widen to sweeping pastures dotted with butter-yellow cows, their contented lowing forming a grounded bass to lark melodies above. Sam hums a walking tune, each verse praising humble vegetables, and the toadstool harmonizes on the chorus, producing chords that flutter nearby hedges. A pair of foxes appear on a knoll, heads cocked as if judging musicality, then trot off with tails high. I record that wildlife in the Shire appears unusually responsive to fungal acoustics. We'll cross-reference with earlier observations of silver minnows performing spiral drills. Mid-afternoon light paints the white downs ahead in soft limestone hues, and an occasional glint where exposed chalk catches sun like a mirror. Frodo explains that barrows hide along those slopes, ancient resting places watched by rangers and wiser winds. Bilbo advises we skirt the mounds, given the playful nature of certain spirits who enjoy borrowing voices after dusk. Pippin imagines barrow wights debating jam flavors and nearly drops the reins laughing. Sam counters that any spirit who tastes elderberry would likely abandon mischief for scone making. The cart rocks with merriment, while Chestnut plods on unfazed ears, twitching in time to the rolling conversation. A crossroads appears, marked by a rough stone cairn, topped with a weathered lantern. The glass panes look plain until twilight glances upon them. Then tiny runes flare sapphire blue in sequential patterns, spelling welcome to all who journey with care. Bilbo studies the flicker and identifies old craftwork, a road guardian lamp that brightens when travelers approach with friendly purpose. The toadstool acknowledges the lantern with a brief chromatic slide, and the runes reply in matching tone, creating a fleeting duet of light and sound over sun-warmed gravel. I jot a note that certain relics recognize courteous fungi, a sentence I never expected to author. We turn south along a hedge of blooming broom, golden petals brushing the cart sides in fragrant greeting. A distant rumble suggests an afternoon storm brewing beyond the downs. Yet the breeze around us stays gentle, as if weather hesitates to interrupt the concert unfolding between mushroom and lamp. Mary sprinkles a pinch of bay essence on a passing gust, claiming it placates contrary clouds. Moments later, the rumble drifts eastward. Whether charm, coincidence, or compliant meteorology, morale climbs. Frodo raises the crystal sphere above his head, and sunlight fractures through the glass like a spiderweb of rainbows across the path, prompting Sam to declare that even if weather turns rough, color will shepherd us onward. Dusk slides across the white downs like violet wine poured over pale stone, filling hollows with rich shadow, while the last rim of sun lingers a breath longer on far hedgerows. We guide the cart into a hollow sheltered by an ancient oak whose branches sprawl like a friendly giant stretching after a long story. Chestnut exhales a steam plume that fades among firefly glimmers, and the wheels sigh to a stop on soft turf still warm from afternoon light. The toadstool crate answers this pause with a single satisfied hum, deep and sonorous, a note that seems to settle every blade of grass into evening posture. Overhead the first star flickers, mirrored at once in the crystal sphere that Frodo props upon a flat stone, turning our chosen camp into a tiny planetarium waiting for tales to hatch. Sam builds a small cooking fire, stacking sticks in a careful teepee that spares the oak roots. Flames rise and paint orange masks upon our faces, while a kettle croons over kindling. Bilbo consults the root parchment, its ink gleaming amber in the firelight, then folds it away and declares wayfinding now belongs to tomorrow's thoughts. Pippin unpacks a tin of lentil patties, which he seasons with a flourish of thyme and comic bow, and Mary sets slices of ambitious cheese to melt on rye crackers balanced along the fire's stones. The toadstool provides background music, a soft drone that modulates whenever sparks leap skyward, as though encouraging their graceful dance. From the brush comes a rustle that reveals itself to be a badger, most civil, nose twitching at savory scents before it shuffles off with a polite huff. As stew thickens, a tall figure approaches from the twilight, cloak blending with shadows until fire gleam reveals a familiar ranger whose eyes hold both starlight and road dust. He greets us in a voice low as distant river stone, and offers news that the barrows ahead rest quiet tonight, their guardians lulled by calm weather and long songs carried on the west wind. He pauses at the toadstool crate, eyebrow rising when violet light pulses in recognition. With measured words, he gifts Bilbo a small silver rune-carved disc no larger than a copper penny, explaining it absorbs wandering whispers and keeps them from slipping into mortal dreams. He accepts a bowl of stew, shares 3 silent spoonfuls, then vanishes again beyond fire glow, leaving the scent of pine and watchfulness in his wake. Dinner concludes with soft applause of satisfied cutlery. Pippin launches into a tale of a ghost who traded its moan for raspberry jam and now haunts pantries only when shelves run low. To universal eye rolls and secret grins, Frodo steadies the sphere upon his palm, and images bloom within, abstract swirls that gradually sharpen into apple trees, heavy with fruit under silver moonlight. Each apple glows, then gently bursts into notes of music that float away like bubbles before dissolving into the dark. The toadstool joins in, humming harmony, and for a heartbeat the meadow fills with an orchard of invisible sound, sweet and crisp. Even the oak above us rustles leaves in tempo, satisfied with the impromptu concert. A thin mist drifts from the downs after supper, curling between roots and ankles, carrying a chill whisper that plucks at curiosity. where it thickens, faint shapes flicker, tall and robed, lacking substance, yet suggestive of bygone kings guarding forgotten doors. The silver disk in Bilbo's vest warms, drawing the haze toward itself like iron filings to lodestone. The toadstool responds with a clear bell tone that vibrates the very soil. At once the mist figures unravel into harmless ribbons of moisture that settle as dew upon the clover, and in their wake remain clusters of tiny white flowers shaped like stars, scentless yet hopeful. Sam gathers 3 for pressing, concluding every scare is improved when it leaves souvenirs. We bank the fire to glowing coals and spread blankets in a crescent around the warmth. Above constellations wheel in silent procession, mirrored softer in the crystal sphere, which now rests asleep, its lights dimmed to gentle embers. Chestnut stands tethered nearby, head low, ears twitching at night, insects who croon lullabies. The toadstool crate lowers its song to a faint heartbeat, blending with the distant rush of wind over chalk hills. Bilbo volunteers first watch, pipe glowing like a tiny beacon of calm. I stretch beneath the oak, journal resting on my chest, recording wonder until words blur and eyelids drop. Night settles, thick and kind, promising that whatever mystery tomorrow devises, this company will greet it with steady feet and freshly buttered courage. Bilbo's pipe ember fades to soft orange, while the fire gutters low and a hush deep as lake water settles over the hollow. The silver-ruined disk at his breast continues to pulse faintly, drawing stray whispers like moths to lamplight, yet he remains untroubled, gazing across the downs as though reading distant history carved on the dark. I drift in light doze, notebook open to catch stray thoughts, when a thrum rolls through the earth, gentle but insistent. The toadstool stirs inside its crate, releasing a chord that climbs in volume until the crystal sphere wakes, its inner stars blooming bright. Chestnut snorts and stamps once, then stands calm, ears flicking forward. The fire sparks in response, sending a quick fan of embers skyward that swirl like ruddy fireflies before fizzling into the black. Sam sits up, rubbing eyes, and joins Bilbo at the edge of the fire circle, just as the ground nearby cracks with a fine fissure no wider than a beetle's back. From the seam rises a pale thread of light, twisting upward until it forms a slender arch no taller than a hobbit. Within the arch shimmer scenes of moonlit woodland, silver leaves trembling in an unseen breeze. Frodo draws a breath sharp with wonder, yet no one moves closer, all aware that invitations can be both kind and perilous. The toadstool hum shifts key, settling into a steady drone that matches the silver disc rhythm. Slowly, the arch folds in on itself like paper dipped in water, sealing the seam and leaving no trace but a faint frost ring on the grass. Mary exhales a long whistle, shaking off astonishment faster than most, and declares that midnight strolls in the Shire rarely involve portable doorways. Bilbo agrees, voice calm, though eyes sparkle, and notes that some pathways seek only to confirm the courage of passers-by. He thanks the toadstool for its timely vigilance and offers another pinch of damp moss through the crate slats. The fungus responds with 2 soft notes, like a cello played beyond a closed door, and the crystal sphere dims again to restful glow. Pippin turns over, mutters about jam thieves riding moonbeams, then resumes, snoring. The rest of us share quiet laughter, tension dissolving like sugar in warm tea. Clouds form ragged islands across the starfield, drifting without hurry, and the oak above us sighs in dreamlike rustle. that could be distant laughter or old advice. Bilbo passes the watch to Sam, who settles beside the coals with a mug of nettle tea, boots just within the radius of ember heat. I shift beneath my blanket, sleep tugging kindly, notebook tucked away safe. In the edges of awareness, I hear Sam murmuring unused verses of garden songs, words about seeds, remembering sunlight and roots, untangling secrets from stone. The toadstool echoes each refrain, softer each time, until melody and hum weave into a lullaby that settles over camp like fresh quilt. Hours glide unnoticed. When next I wake, a paling sky hints at dawn beyond the downs, air crisp with promise. Sam nods, restful though alert, silver disk dark and cool, crate silent, sphere idle. Dew sparkles across blankets, and the frost ring now glistens like powdered sugar before it fades with first color. Bilbo stirs, stretches, and congratulates the company on navigating a night rich in taste yet sparing in trouble, proof that curiosity and caution can indeed share a cup. We rise, pack embers with ash, and greet morning birdsong, hearts buoyed by the knowledge that the road ahead remains unscripted, yet friendships and gentle wonders will ink each mile with ink no fear can stain. Pale pink dawn slips across the white downs, brushing the chalk faces with a fleeting blush before settling into gold upon the tops of waving broom. Our camp stirs in the hush, blankets glittering with dew, and last night's frost ring, now only a damp halo in the grass. Chestnut shakes his mane, sending droplets into the air like sparks shaken from a forge, then noses Sam's shoulder for acknowledgement. The toadstool crate responds with a drowsy hum, low and content, causing tiny rings to ripple across the surface of the kettle Sam left cooling near the coals. Above, a lark tests the day with 3 clear notes, each one mirrored in the crystal sphere balanced on a flat stone, its depths waking to swirling ivory clouds that mimic the newborn sky. Breakfast begins as a gentle negotiation with the fire. Sam coaxes a small blaze from last night's hidden embers, adding twig bundles that pop with the scent of pine resin. Bilbo measures spoonfuls of barley into the pot, stirring until the grains swirl like stars in some amber galaxy. Pippin appears with pockets bulging, producing gooseberries gathered at dawn along the hedge, declaring them perfect for tartness and therefore heroism. Mary arranges thin slices of the ambitious cheese on flat stones warmed near the fire, the edges melting just enough to curve like sleepy smiles. Frodo consults the root parchment and notes that Michelle Delving lies a pleasant half-day away if we pause only twice for snacks, a plan met with optimistic silence. While porridge thickens, Bilbo examines the silver-ruined disc, now cool and dull, and muses that true safeguards rest as quietly as good manners until needed. He lends it to Frodo, fastening it beside the sphere case as a token of watchful luck. The toadstool hum rises a tone, an approving chord that draws soft laughter from the group. I add a line in my journal regarding the correlation between fungal acoustics and collective morale, then pause to inhale steam scented with berry and cinnamon. The flavor, once tasted, proves both sharp and soothing, prompting Sam to declare that optimism has a recipe, and we have nearly perfected it. Chestnut receives an apple core for his patience and stamps in gratitude. Camp dismantles with practiced rhythm, blankets fold, ropes coil, and the sphere slips into its padded cradle, where light plays across velvet like moonlight trapped in still water. Sam discovers that frost flowers have formed on the outer slats of the toadstool crate, delicate crystal ferns grown from last night's stray hum. He brushes them into a small glass vial, claiming they may lend subtle sweetness to summer cordials, an idea Bilbo earmarks for later experimentation. Pippin retrieves the melted cheese stones, now hardened into crisp shells he names Dawn biscuits, and stores them in waxed paper lest future hunger protests grow loud. Before wheels roll, we climb a near rise to let the sun fully warm our limbs. From this vantage point, the downs ripple westward in lazy folds, dotted by gorse and shadows shaped like sailing ships. A narrow brook threads below, murmuring secrets to moss-covered stones. Frodo spots faint glimmers in the water, and we descend for a closer look. There we find a cluster of tiny, translucent creatures, no longer than a thumbnail, drifting with the current like living opals. They sing in a frequency almost beyond hearing, a thin silver choir that harmonizes with the toadstool's distant bass. Sam likens them to river lanterns, while Bilbo kneels, palms open, offering silent greeting. The sprites gather, twirl once in unison, then dart away, leaving behind a single drop of water that clings to Bilbo's fingertip and refuses to fall, glowing with mild internal light. He pockets it in a corked phial, promising careful study. With spirits bright, we return to the cart, cinch straps, and set off along the gentle track. Larks trade melodies overhead, each refrain answered by violet chords from the crate, until the music fades into the rustle of broom and distant sheep calling from hidden pastures. I sit on the rear bench, journal open, recording every scent and chord, convinced that someday scholars will argue whether 6 travelers, a pony, and 1 musical fungus truly braided light and sound across a morning road. Ahead, the downs beckon like a page, half-turned, and the west road melts into sunshine that seems eager to crown the first milestone of the day with quiet applause. Sun reaches its zenith, and the white downs exchange morning hush for the vivid hum of early afternoon. Heat rises in gentle waves that make distant hedges shimmer like mirages guarding secret doorways. Our cart creaks along a grassy ridge, wheels cushioned by turf, dotted with tiny blue speedwell blossoms. Michelle delving peaks from the next valley, a quilt of slate roofs and round doors nested against chalk cliffs, white as new parchment. Sam calls a halt beside a lone hawthorn, declaring it polite to share lunch where shade and view shake hands. Blankets unfurl, cheese rounds emerge, and Pippin unveils Dawn biscuits that survived his pockets intact, if flatter than issued. The toadstool hums, approval, deep and steady, causing petals to fall in slow spirals that land on our plates like fragile pink napkins no one requested, yet everyone enjoys. While we dine, a rollicking melody drifts up the slope, carried by a lively breeze that smells of warm clay and roasting barley. Below, a troop of dwarves and hobbits pulls a great kite shaped like a green dragon, its silk wings stitched with gold thread that flashes each time it tugs the line. Children cheer, running in zigzag pursuit, while parents laugh and wave linen kerchiefs overhead. The toadstool crate answers with a jaunty trill, and the kite dips once in polite bow before catching another gust that lofts it beyond the ridge. Frodo steadies the crystal sphere to capture the scene, and within the glass, a miniature dragon now sails against a storm of glimmering dust motes, forever looping a sky no wider than a teacup. Bilbo observes that courage comes in many fabrics, some as thin as silk, yet strong enough to haul whole afternoons into memory. Journey resumes on a gently sloping track lined with broom in full golden bloom. Each time the cart brushes a branch, a puff of pollen lifts, tinting the air with a haze that makes Sam sneeze twice, then declare himself purified. At a stone arch bridge carved with runes of forgotten rivers, we pause to listen to water murmur beneath. The silver disk at Frodo's belt tingles, and reflections gather into fleeting images of boats gliding under moonlight, crude by silhouettes singing in tongues older than hill roots. The vision blurs when a trout leaps, scattering sunlight like shards of quicksilver, and all returns to ripples and moss. I note that magic here behaves like polite house guests, offering stories, but never overstaying curiosity. Past the bridge, the road wends through fields where tall oats whisper secrets to any ear patient enough to idle. Bilbo recounts a saying that oats gossip louder than sparrows when storms brew, and as if offended, the stalks stiffen, then sway in harmonized rustle that sounds suspiciously like laughter. Pippin wagers a jar of jam that skies will stay clear until supper, while Merry counters with 2 peppermints on a distant cloud bank creeping over the western rim. The toadstool refuses to pick sides, releasing a cord that hovers exactly between Merry and caution. Chestnut flicks his tail, uninterested in wagered weather, content to follow the scent of clover drifting from unseen meadows. Mid-afternoon sun softens as we near Applelock Orchard, a gentle slope where ancient trees twist like dancers caught mid-step. Branches hang heavy with pale green fruit, still weeks from harvest, yet already fragrant. The orchard keeper, a plump hobbit with beard as white as pie crust, greets us. Recognizing Bilbo from tales swapped at last year's fair, he offers a sample pear, crisp and cool, from a shaded basket, insisting travelers need sweetness that crunches. Frodo trades a glimpse into the crystal sphere, tipping it to reveal captive dragon flight. The keeper gasps, hat nearly falling, and in return gifts a small woven ribbon scented with brandy to hang beside the toadstool crate, claiming it wards woodworm and idle envy in equal measure. We roll onward, bellies content, spirits buoyant, and the landscape eases into wide greens, where wind combs grass into rippling silver waves. Larks dive, then rise again, writing invisible sigils against an endless blue, and each flourish seems echoed by delicate harmonics from our fungal companion. I scribble frantically, attempting to capture simultaneous choreography of wind, bird, and hum, yet ink can only chase behind. Ahead, Michelle Delving's west gate glints in sunlight, promising stone corridors, cool as cellar shadow, and the first glimpse of the Matham house, whose halls wait to cradle our sphere. The afternoon still stretches generous before us, a ribbon of possibility leading into the town, and every wheel turn sounds like quiet applause, welcoming whatever wonders choose to walk beside us next. Cobblestone lanes gather beneath cartwheels as we enter Michelle Delving, the afternoon sun striking every slate roof and whitewashed lintel until the town appears dipped in cream and honey. A bustling market spreads before the west gate, stalls brimming with summer fabrics, clay whistles, and pies that steam cinnamon into the air. The toadstool crate issues a mellow greeting chord, which rolls across flagstones and seems to coax wind chimes on a linen booth into perfect harmony. Shoppers glance up, unsure whether the melody drifts from pipes unseen or the stones themselves humming approval. Bilbo tips his hat at a seamstress who curtsies with an armful of burgundy ribbon, and she passes him a small scrap for luck. Insisting red invites stories to finish with cheerful endings. We guide Chestnut along a boulevard lined with tall elms, whose branches meet above like fingertips of cathedral arches, cooling the heat to a pleasant sigh. Frodo consults a carved signpost, then navigates toward the Matham house, its turrets of pale stone rising beside the town green. Children dash past, trailing paper boats on strings, each vessel painted to resemble distant ships with billowing ink sails. Our crystal sphere catches their reflection and locks the moment inside, boats forever, tacking through a glass sea. The silver-ruined disk glows faintly, acknowledging proximity to a trove of treasured relics, and the toadstool hum deepens, as though tuning itself for a grand echo it anticipates within those halls. Approaching the Matham house gate, we pause to admire gargoyles, carved like watchful owls, perched among ivy, stone eyes gleaming where mica chips catch sunlight. A curator in moss-green waistcoat emerges, spectacles balanced on the end of his nose, and greets Bilbo by name with the delight of a scholar meeting a living footnote. He peers at our odd procession, notes the locked crate emitting measured chords, and the velvet pouch cradling the sphere, then claps hands softly, calling it a donation most harmonious. Formalities follow, a ledger with ribbons, signatures, and a wax seal pressed by a tiny hammer shaped like a goose, while Pippin struggles not to sample the sealing wax, which smells suspiciously of vanilla bean. Inside, the main gallery arches overhead in quiet grandeur, banners of soft linen painted with constellations, drifting like gentle clouds between pillars. Display cases line the floor, each lit by glass globes that harvest daylight and release it in steady glow. The curator escorts our group to a pedestal of carved ashwood waiting beneath a skylight shaped like a seven-pointed star. When Frodo unveils the crystal sphere, a hush spreads across the hall, similar to snow settling on evergreen boughs. He places it upon a silk cushion, and the glass responds with swirling silver that resolves into a flight of minnows spiraling around a dragon kite, images captured on our journey now offered to every new eye. Nearby, the toadstool crate settles, releasing a cord so gentle the banners overhead ripple as though exhaling. Sam opens the crate, just enough for violet light to seep over the stone plinth, and in that glow, visitors see the mushroom's cap, spots pulsing like distant beacons. The curator, wide-eyed, decides on the spot to grant it a guest residence in the living exhibit wing, where sentient artifacts commune after hours under watchful moonlight, trapped by mirrored skylights. Bilbo attaches an engraved plaque, reading kindly on loan from Bag End, Traveler, and Friends. With the return date left blank, for some wonders resist definite schedules. The silver disc at Frodo's belt cools to quiet metal, its duty satisfied, while children press faces to the cordon rope, eyes huge at the duet of glass constellation and humming fungus. With tasks complete, we step back into late afternoon sun, feeling lighter in pocket yet full in spirit. The curator rewards our commission with tokens for the municipal bakery, redeemable for any pastry crowned with clotted cream roses, and tickets to tonight's lantern regatta on the Lily Canal. Pippin pockets the pastry tokens like crown jewels. Mary plots strategic sampling routes, and Sam notes the canal event should soothe the toadstool, which remains near but released from crate, humming notes that echo among town walls. Bells toll quarter past, blending with distant laughter and the rustle of elm leaves, as Michelle Delving opens its evening embrace, ready to layer another story upon the many we already carry. Evening wraps, Michelle delving in a shawl of amber lantern glow, each window spilling warm rectangles onto cobbles still soft from afternoon sun. We follow the curve of Lily Canal, where water reflects rows of candles floating in paper lotus boats, fire petals drifting on a current slow as lullaby rhythm. Bells from the town hall toll sunset, their copper voices resonating against chalk cliffs, rising and falling in gentle arcs that coax hush even from lively tavern doors. At the bakery window, Pippin trades our tokens for pastries, puffed like cloud fragments, crowned with roses of clotted cream that glisten under street lamps. The scent of vanilla and nutmeg lingers around us, mingling with the fragrant wax of nearby lanterns and a hint of cool clay from the canal bricks. We settle on a stone bench overlooking the water as the regatta procession begins. Townsfolk line the banks, holding poles tipped with glass globes containing fireflies, their pulsing light-timed 2 village heartbeat songs whispered earlier by the choirmaster. One by one, they lower lotus boats onto the current. Each boat carries a wish scribbled on rice paper, folded into tiny origami cranes nestled beside the candle. Our toadstool, now perched in a velvet-padded tray beside Bilbo, hums a luminous chord that ripples across the canal, causing the closest boats to spin gracefully, their flames bending as if bowing in polite gratitude. The crystal sphere, displayed earlier, now rests in Frodo's hands. Within its depths, reflections of the candle fleet bloom and fade, like galaxies birthed on a slow clock. A hush falls as the mayor steps onto a small barge, releasing the ceremonial lantern shaped like a silver swan. Its candle glows blue, an alchemical light said to soothe restless dreams. The swan glides forward, beak cutting a V of faint ripples that nudge other boats into gentle orbits. The silver rune disk at Frodo's belt tingles again, faint sapphire sparks winking around its edge, echoing the swan lantern glow. He touches it absent-mindedly, noting how the swan's reflection in the water seems deeper than the canal should allow, as though an unseen sky swims beneath the bricks. I scribbled the observation, wondering if depth sometimes listens to memory rather than measurement. Music begins, soft strings, a low drum heartbeat, and a choir of young voices singing of clear nights, friendly hearths, and roads that wander yet return. The lyrics drift across water like fragrant smoke, settling into every fold of night. A gentle breeze carries the tune toward the toadstool, which replies with a harmony in minor key, a bittersweet undertone that wraps the melody in quiet longing. The effect is immediate. Candles flare brighter, and for a moment the entire canal shines like a vein of molten gold cutting through chalk. Townsfolk murmur, sensing magic, walking politely among familiar stones, though none seek to seize it. They simply let the wonder rest upon their shoulders like a warm shawl, unforgettable yet unanxious. As more lotus boats join the fleet, the canal transforms into a mirrored Milky Way. Each candle a star drifting toward the distant sluice gate where water flows beneath the city walls. Sam remarks that wishes, like good seeds, need river currents to find fertile soil beyond gardens. Bilbo nods, eyes reflecting dozens of tiny flames, and replies that perhaps stories follow similar routes, carried by time's gentle water until they anchor in quiet hearts. Pippin offers a pastry to the river with a wink, claiming fish crave dessert dreams too. The pastry floats a moment, then vanishes with a splash that sends concentric rings shimmering in lantern reflections. The toadstool punctuates the event with a playful trill, and laughter ripples along the bank as naturally as wind through barley. The choir song fades, and individual conversations rise like soft bubbles through lamplight. But the canal is not finished speaking. At the bend near the willow arch, a cluster of lotus boats bunch together, candles leaning toward one another, as if sharing a rumor. Ripples gather under their hulls without visible breeze, parting to reveal a figure fashioned of the water itself, slender as a reed, eyes gleaming moonstone white. It lifts a translucent hand, and the boats drift into a ring, flames brightening until the willow leaves glow green gold. The water spirit tilts its head toward the toadstool, listening to the violet hum that now fills every brick pour along the embankment. Then, with a ripple of satisfaction, it sinks, scattering the boats like startled fireflies, and the circle becomes a spiral that turns slowly down the current, carrying whispered wishes farther than any canal map reaches. Gasps mingle with delighted laughter. The mayor bows toward the vanishing spirit, doffing his hat as if greeting a visiting dignitary, then signals the musicians to resume. They shift to a sprightly jig, fiddles skipping like pebbles across pond surfaces, and the crowd responds by twirling ribbons that reel in the glow of floating candles. Frodo spins the silver rune disc between thumb and forefinger, watching how it captures stray notes and releases them as faint blue sparks. He grins, pockets the disc, and turns to Bilbo. "Proof that a good lantern show attracts refined company," he says. Bilbo chuckles, claiming he once hosted dwarves at a birthday dinner who drank half the cellar and still failed to conjure water guests, which suggests elementals prefer low noise and high sincerity. Sam distributes final pastries, claiming carbs fortify courage during magical evenings. Pippin, cheeks powdered with sugar, attempts to teach to dwarven visitors the steps to a Tookish harvest reel. Their boots thunder on the stones, rattling a cart of honey jars, whose lids sing like bell chimes at every stomp. Merry turns a fallen lantern pole into an impromptu staff, leading children in mock sword drills that end with heroic poses reflected in canal glass. All the while, the toadstool offers gentle bass lines that anchor merry chaos, its glow pulsing in time with heartbeats shared under elm canopy. I sit at bench edge, journal balanced on knee, noting how joy spreads through space, like spice in mulled wine, impossible to separate once swirled. Near midnight, the last lotus reaches the sluice gate, tipping its flame to darkness, and the canal hushes, 2 gentle laps on stone. One by one, lanterns dim along the promenade, replaced by the silver hush of stars overhead. The toadstool crate closes itself, cap folding like a parasol, then releases a soft exhale of violet mist that scents the night with petrichor and faint clover. Residents sigh, satisfied, as though bedtime now carries official approval. Bilbo gathers our sleepy entourage, pockets stuffed with ribbon souvenirs, and half a pastry wrapped in parchment for Chestnut. We weave back to the inn, footsteps cushioned by candle wax cooled on cobbles, while the crystal sphere at Frodo's side retains pale echoes of water music, guiding us through quiet streets that feel gently enchanted, yet utterly at ease in their new story. Morning seeps into Michelle, delving like honey through warm bread, slow and generous, leaving every sill glazed with soft gold. I rise in a small upstairs room of the ivy post-in, where beams of sunlight cross the quilt in orderly stripes, inviting inspection of dust motes that float like unhurried stars. The street below hums with first chores, cartwheels thumping over cobbles, distant roosters declaring an urban sunrise with extra bravado. I stretch hearing gentle creaks from centuries-old floorboards that seem pleased to assist another day of notes and wandering. On the washstand, a pitcher of rose-scented water waits, a courtesy from the innkeeper, and as I splash my face, the fragrance awakens memory of last night's lotus lanterns, still drifting somewhere in my dreams. Downstairs, the common room smells of malt, baked pear, and a hint of last night's candle wax. Sam is already stationed at the hearth flipping discs of oat batter that puff into plump griddle cakes, the color of early autumn fields. Pippin hovers with plate in hand, claiming to test each cake for temperature safety, a responsibility he approaches with heroic enthusiasm. Mary polishes tin cups until they shine like small moons, then fills them with creamy tea from a copper kettle that murmurs friendly gossip in gentle bubbles. Bilbo consults a ledger from the Matham house, satisfied their exhibit opened at first bell, and Frodo folds a fresh town map into precise quarters, pointing out bookstores likely to barter for stories preserved in spheres. Breakfast proceeds with the comforting cadence of cutlery against well-loved wood. The toadstool rests in its velvet tray upon a side table, cap unfurled once more, humming a rich chord every time Pippin declares a plate finished, which means the melody resembles a slow brass march. Chestnut peers through the open doorway, attracted by steam and kind whispers, and receives a slice of pear for both curiosity and loyalty. Outside, market stalls awaken like flowers, shutters flipping open to reveal bolts of fabric-dyed crab-apple red, jars of lemon curd, and baskets of quills trimmed from goose wings raised on pond lilies north of here. Town criers pin neat notices announcing tonight's poetry circle under the elm arch, an event that lifts Bilbo's brow with scholarly intrigue. We step into the lane once bowls gleam empty. Air carries faint notes of harp from an upper window where a student practices scales, each arpeggio drifting over rooftops and sliding into side streets, as if testing acoustics for upcoming adventures. Frodo pauses near the bakery that framed last evening's regatta tokens, mesmerized by a display of seedloaf towers decorated with candied violets. The baker, cheeks pink as sponge cake, insists on gifting a mini loaf to commemorate the water spirit's cameo, an act he credits to our traveling aura. The toadstool hums a polite-based reply, and the baker nearly drops his peel, certain the sound came from a hidden pipe ensemble. I assure him that good bread often inspires spontaneous harmony, then hurry along before further questions sprout. We cross the green toward the public scriptorium, intent on sharing field sketches with the resident calligrapher who translates lived marvels into illuminated rolls for townsfolk who mistrust loose parchment. Children play hoop and stick nearby, their laughter weaving through cypress shade, while sparrows offer obligato from gutter rails. As I walk, the silver rune disc in Frodo's pocket clicks softly, as though counting steps to some quiet threshold. Sam proposes we visit the canal again after midday to thank the Willow Arch for safe passage of wishes, a suggestion unanimously approved. I note the plan in ink, still scented with the inn's rosewater, feeling the morning settle around us like a well-tuned overture that holds infinite promise in each measured beat. High noon finds the town green, shimmering under a quilt of birdsong and lazy cloud shadows. We leave the scriptorium with scrolls freshly penned, letters curving like well-watered vines, and step into a gentle bustle of midday shoppers. Stalls clatter with bright brass buckles, jars of plum preserve, and skeins of yarn dyed indigo so deep it seems to hold last night's sky. The toadstool, tucked in its velvet tray, atop a small handcart, issues a mellow hum each time a passerby bows or smiles, as though acknowledging every kindness. Bilbo observes that courtesy must be contagious, because soon even a grumbling cobbler pauses to tip his cap at Chestnut, who accepts the honor with a slow blink and a leisurely tail swish. We follow Maple Lane toward the canal, passing under trellises heavy with white jasmine whose scent drifts in soft waves. Frodo pauses at an antiquarian bookstall where cracked leather spines lean like tired scholars. He trades 2 field sketches of water spirits for a slender volume titled The Secret Eclipses of Quiet Worlds, bound in sea-green cloth that shimmers when turned against the sun. The proprietor claims the book chooses its own readers and nods respectfully toward the toadstool, which answers with a brief chord as crisp as chiseled quartz. Sam pockets 3 seed packets from the adjacent herb stand, promising to test their lineage back in the Bagshot garden, though he suspects 1 packet of starwort may try to root in moonlight only. The canal appears ahead, water bright as polished glass, mirroring awnings striped ochre and cream. We reach the willow arch, still dripping beads of morning dew, each drop catching sun like miniature lanterns. Pippin kneels at the bank, slices yesterday's seed loaf into cubes, and floats them downstream as breakfast for any lingering river sprites. A faint ripple answers, forming concentric hearts that spread beneath the willow branches before fading. The silver-ruined disk at Frodo's side warms, and in its surface we glimpse a fleeting reflection of yesterday's water spirit, bowing once before vanishing into calm current. Bilbo tosses a single goose quill into the flow in thanks, watching it sail away like a pale ship bound for quiet harbors. Nearby, a marble bench carved with intertwined ivy motifs invites pause. We sit, sharing cool slices of pear and wedges of mild cheese wrapped in grape leaves. The toadstool hum deepens to a contented drone that resonates through stone and into the soles of our boots, blending with distant hammer strikes from a smithy across the harbor. Children's laughter rings as they guide miniature reed rafts between candle boats left from last night, new wishes already scribbled on fresh petals. I note how joy here behaves like dandelion seed, floating on any convenient breeze, keen to root in every crack of daily routine. A breeze arrives, lifting the scent of fresh ink from our new scrolls, and twirling it with jasmine until the afternoon tastes faintly of both invention and promise. Mary suggests exploring the quarry path beyond the far hill, where, rumor claims, chalk cliffs sing when tapped with hazel sticks. Sam agrees, citing geological curiosity and perhaps pockets ready for extra chalk to enrich compost. Bilbo checks the sun's angle, judges we have hours before the poetry circle, and grants the venture his approval. Chestnut nickers at the prospect of country lanes. Frodo secures the sea-green book in a satchel alongside starwort seeds, while the toadstool hum shifts to an adventurous key, lower strings gathering under melody like quiet drums. We set off once more, wheels rolling over sun-warmed cobbles, toward a gate leading beyond town walls, where meadow scent waits like a freshly opened chapter, eager to be read aloud by hoof, song, and careful observation. The road beyond Michel Delving changes from cobble to firm chalk, crunching under cartwheels with a satisfying whisper like crushed meringue. Hedgerows withdraw, replaced by open meadow dotted with buttercups and tall harebells, purple as twilight hymn. Far off, the chalk quarry rises, its pale cliff sliced clean, layer upon layer, exposed like someone sliced a great cake to reveal secrets of seasons long vanished. Larks spiral overhead, shadows flickering across tracks of limestone dust, and chestnut sets a steady pace, nostrils flaring at the sharper scent of exposed mineral. The toadstool in its tray hums a curious motif, intervals stepping upward, matching each new ridge crest we climb. I note that fungal eagerness appears to correlate with altitude and potential echo quality. Closer, the cliff face towers, white streaked with faint veins of rose and gold, and a low breeze trickles out of its hollows, carrying the cool, damp breath of spaces where sun seldom treads. Sam finds a hazel stick, taps gently, and the expected song arrives, a sweet bell tone that leaps from stone to stone, cascading through natural alcoves until it settles into rumbling bass deep within the quarry. Frodo tries a second rhythm, short taps, then pause, and the cliff responds with a short trumpet flourish, as though improvising with polite flair. Pippin leaps forward, striking a jaunty jig, and entire swaths of chalk vibrate in rising laughter of notes, causing loose dust to shimmer in sunlight like suspended snowfall. Even Bilbo, seasoned in marvel, gasps aloud, eyes reflecting the white brilliance, as if he stood within a cathedral of sculpted moonlight. While melodies continue, Mary notices faint glyphs etched in a recessed shelf, symbols curving like anchored vines, their grooves packed with chalk dust. He brushes gently with sleeve, revealing copper streaks beneath. Bilbo examines, murmuring that ancient travelers once marked safe rest caves with copper inlay, believing metal connected ground music to warding charms. He traces the line, copper warm despite shade, and the toadstool releases a low resonant chord that makes the glyph shimmer. A section of stone rotates inward, slow and silent, revealing a hollow large enough for 10 hobbits or one very determined pony. Cool air pours out, scented of fern and distant water. Sam fishes a lantern from the cart, lights it, and soft amber glow floods the passage, revealing walls rough, yet streaked with tiny crystals that catch flame glow and multiply it until the interior glitters like captured starlight. Inside, a shallow pool mirrors the vaulted ceiling, breakers of stone arching above so finely balanced they appear suspended by thought alone. The water surface undisturbed, yet when the toadstool hum reaches the chamber, delicate ripples form concentric rings, each one sparking points of blue light as though stars woke at its urging. Frodo kneels, touches a fingertip to the water, and images bloom beneath. Visions of the canal at night, lotus boats swirling, plus new vistas, unknown tall forest pillars, a white shore, maybe the echo of far harbors yet unvisited. Bilbo advises respect. Reflections often show places both behind and before a traveler, and reckless questions can tangle the thread of day. We stand silent, letting the hidden pool finish its tale before retreating into summer light. Exiting, we replace the copper glyph, and the stone face glides shut without scrape, sealing echo and memory alike. Sam pockets a small shard of fallen chalk, promising to grind it into garden tonic. Pippin proposes naming the cave Minuet Hollow, given its responsive melody. Bilbo notes the designation in his travel ledger with a flourish. Afternoon sun now sits lower, spreading broad shadows across meadow, as though tucking hills under linen sheets. The toadstool hum mellows to a slow waltz tempo, perhaps sated by resonance and wonder. We turn cart toward town, chalk dust trailing like faint comet tail behind wheels, hearts buoyed by an unexpected concert carved in ancient white stone. ready for the evening's poetry to find new rhythm in freshly discovered chords. Dusk paints Michelle, delving with layers of apricot and mauve as we roll through the west gate, cartwheels echoing a soft farewell to chalk roads behind us. Lanterns along Maple Lane flicker awake, their glass panels etched with ivy silhouettes that stretch into growing shadow like curious cats. The elm arch by the green glows beneath strings of small glass baubles filled with glowworm light, placed earlier by townsfolk preparing for the poetry circle. A hush of anticipation hovers, woven from turning pages, hushed rehearsals, and the faint clink of teacups carried from a booth perfumed with cardamom. Our toadstool hum joins the gentle symphony, offering a warm alto drone that settles on cobbles and stalls alike, coaxing every heart into restful cadence after playground bright afternoon hours up by the quarry. We stable Chestnut behind the ivy post, where buckets of cool well water wait beside braided garlands of fresh clover. The pony dips his nose with grateful snort, while Sam brushes chalk dust from his coat, murmuring praise that sounds a lullaby for hooves. Inside the inn's side parlor, Bilbo arranges our newly penned scroll upon a lectern, unfurling illuminated margins that sparkle where copper ink catches lamplight. The calligrapher from earlier arrives, delighted to see his work already poised to greet eager eyes, and compliments Bilbo on field notes neat enough to dance. Pippin sneaks to seed cakes from the kitchen, distributing them like clandestine medicine for pre-performance nerves, though he keeps third slice tucked for personal courage should a rhyme run long. As twilight deepens, townsfolk gather beneath the elm, forming a circle around a low table bearing an ornate hourglass. Each reader flips the glass before sharing, red sand falling between polished brass columns, measuring just enough breaths for a tale to breathe without haste. Frodo steps forward first, silver-runed disc glimmering against waistcoat, and recites lines inspired by the lotus fleet, verses where wishes ride tender fire, sailing calm into hush. The sphere in his satchel answers with subdued glow, each grain of sand mirrored inside like drifting comets. Applause rises gentle, more rustle than roar, yet filled with warmth that settles deeper than midday sun. The toadstool replies with a light chord, prompting smiles from listeners who still cannot pinpoint the mysterious accompanist, but welcome it as a familiar star. Next, a stonemason shares an ode to quarried chalk, comparing strata to diary pages of the earth, and his final couplet echoes across the square. To demonstrate living geology, Mary taps a small chalk fragment against the lectern, and a clear note rings through branches above, startling roosting thrushes that chirp a brief encore. Laughter mingles with awe, and someone jokes that even rocks crave audience once they taste applause. Candles brighten as breeze rises, fluttering poems that follow, each voice layering gentle timbre upon late summer night. The sky overhead darkens to velvet, decked with early starlight, and somewhere near the canal a familiar watercourt lingers, as if unseen spirit leans close to hear word ripples weaving through friendly dark. Lantern flames dwindle as the hourglass empties its final red grains, and the mayor invites any last thoughts before night folds shut. Bilbo steps beneath the elm, clears his throat, and offers not a poem but a reflection. How roads stitched with wonder have carried one small company from quiet doorways to singing cliffs and back again, and how every kindness met along the way now rests in the heart like a seed waiting for its own season. He raises the seed loaf ribbon gifted by the orchard keeper ties it to a low branch, and dedicates it to friendships that grow like roots beneath stories, unseen yet enduring. The elm rustles approval, leaves murmuring in accents older than stone. A hush follows, sweeter than applause. Then the toadstool answers with one deep note that lingers in marrow and brick alike. Violet light swirls gently through the gathering, neither bright nor boastful, only a soft signature on the evening's parchment. At that sound, the silver-ruined disc dims, duty fulfilled, and Frodo pockets it with a thoughtful smile. People disperse in twos and threes, voices hushed but happy, each footstep slipping into the cadence of crickets awakening in dark lawns. The canal beyond shows no lantern boats tonight, just starlight scattered on water, like quiet punctuation at chapter's end. Back in the ivy post, we share a final pot of chamomile, steam curling through waning lamplight. Pippin dozes against Merry's shoulder, crumbs of courage, cake decorating his collar. Sam writes garden notes beside the hearth, already planning how chalk, dust, and starwort will mingle in Hobbiton soil. Frodo flips open the secret eclipses of quiet worlds, finds only blank pages, and laughs softly, deciding some books choose to be filled rather than read. Bilbo closes his ledger, ink still fresh, yet already part of legend, and hands me the quill. Record the rest, he whispers, for memories demand witnesses. I note the hour, the quiet joy, the hum now fading to contented silence. When candles gutter out and rooms grow still, I linger at the window. Michelle delving sleeps beneath its chalk cliffs, rooftops, silvered by a half-moon that drifts above like a slow, exhaled sigh. The week behind feels both vast and fragile, a mosaic of small marvels that fit together because everyone we met believed wonder worth sharing. I pressed my journal closed, sensing pages warm from captured life, and at last slip into bed. Outside, the toadstool in its velvet tray releases one final vibration, a lullaby only starlight truly hears, then rests. Tomorrow may scatter companions on separate paths, yet tonight the Shire cradles every mile we traveled, and in that hushed embrace, time itself seems content to pause, breathe, and let the story settle like dew on grateful ground.